All right, well, I think we will go ahead and get started. A couple of folks might still be filtering in, but thank you all for taking the time to join us for the kickoff of the Minneapolis Chamber's Sustainability Webinar Series. This is our very first one, and we're excited that you're all able to join us over the lunch hour. And I apologize for whatever reason, my computer makes me very bright. So sorry that you all have to just look at this bright image, but hopefully it's okay. So for folks I haven't met, my name is Tiffany Orth. I am the Vice President of Mobility here at the Minneapolis Chamber. I oversee our sustainable transportation advocacy priorities, and I also oversee one of our affiliates, Move Minneapolis, which focuses on helping employers in the downtown Minneapolis area with sustainable commuting options. So excited to have everyone here. We want to just make sure that we take a moment to thank our sponsors. This is a very exciting new thing for us, and we're excited that Excellent Energy was willing to embark on this journey with us and help support this series. So big shout out to them. And I also want to thank our speakers who are joining us today. We have some awesome leaders here in the sustainability community who will be talking about their journeys in just a moment. Paul Ziekel, Product Sustainability Manager for Quality Bicycle Products, or QBP, and Heidi Andermack, co-founder and CEO of Chowgirls Catering. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to experience their products and services in some way. But they have also taken great steps to make their organizations themselves completely sustainable. So excited to hear about their journeys. I also want to give a shout out to Frances Huntley, my coworker here, who is behind the scenes working on all of the things to make this webinar run and to coordinate everything leading up to the day. So very grateful to have her supporting all of this. Just a couple of things for the agenda going forward here. We're trying to keep this very informal. We want this ultimately to be a peer sharing space for everybody. We want people to be able to come on camera, come off mute, and be able to share questions, comments, learnings that you all have from your various work in organizations. This is meant to be trying to build that community and peer sharing space for each other, in addition to learning from our fabulous speakers. So we will have time once we get through kind of our overview and panel discussion, beginning at about 12:40, to have Q&A and open discussion. And at that time, we encourage everyone to just interact with us and join the conversation. And feel free throughout the discussion, and Christine will remind you of this in a second, to pop questions or comments in the chat or introduce yourselves. Again, want to encourage everyone to be connected to each other. Just a little bit about why we're doing this. Sustainability has been, I think, a big topic for many in our world with our climate crisis, and just with the need to even save costs and figure out how we can contribute to a better environment. But for the Minneapolis Chamber, we've long had a commitment to advocating for sustainable solutions for businesses. And as we've been doing that and focusing on the environmental sustainability, we felt that we needed to be able to walk the walk a little bit more and be able to really take action within our own organization to become more sustainable. So we began this journey about a year ago, and we, immediately encountered many challenges, which is what I feel we all have experienced, perhaps, as we look at our own sustainability journeys. And one of the big challenges was just knowing where to start. There's a lot of different things that we could focus on, for everything from waste and recycling to energy to transportation. And to think about how we could do this right and design it well from the start, we actually were fortunate to be able to bring on WSB, our local engineering firm, to help shape our journey and develop a plan that would be grounded in the unique circumstances of our organization. And as we began that, the first thing we started learning was that we needed to gather meaningful data to develop a baseline to inform our goals. And that was a challenge in and of itself. No 1 year has been the same for this chamber over the past few years. We've had a pandemic, we've had various mergers with different affiliate organizations, we've had offices that have been scattered around the metro. And so all of that kind of made it complicated for us to figure out what do we actually what actually is a baseline for us. And again, that might not be dissimilar from what some of your other organizations might be experiencing. And then a big thing too is just that there was a challenge of maintaining our own staff capacity to sustain this work. It's been a shared effort amongst myself, Christine, Francis, other members of our organization who have all been contributing in various ways to this. It hasn't been any one person's job. And so we have figured out, various methods for how do we prioritize this and keep this going amongst everything else we have to do in a small nonprofit. So it hasn't been easy. We still struggle with this today, but we're hoping to identify additional resources here to enable us to bring on more capacity to do this work. So, and again, I've mentioned that these challenges aren't dissimilar, hopefully, from other small organizations who might want to become more sustainable, but they either don't know where to start or they may lack the resources to keep the work going. So that's what we really want to lean into and with this series. So we realized that this could be a way that we could serve our members and other small to mid-sized organizations who might be struggling in these journeys. And the goal of this webinar series is to really share these challenges and learnings with all of you and elevate programs and resources and learnings from our wonderful partners, and ultimately, again, connect all of you to each other and create a peer space to share challenges and learnings. So hope that you can all learn from each other throughout this. Again, this is new, so we welcome feedback and opportunities for improvement. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Christine Levins, to bring us into the discussion.
Thanks, Tiffany. Again, my name is Christine Levins. I serve as the Chief of Staff for the Minneapolis Regional Chamber, also as Vice President of Strategic Initiatives. And this is really one of those things that falls into that other bucket of work, right? The things that we want to do that are not traditionally necessarily membership-based, but are resource-driven and education-driven. So this was a great fit for us when we got the opportunity, as much as we had to puzzle about it to get started. We are, to Tiffany's, multifaceted challenges. We're a unique organization, but at the same time, we want to go on the journey and set the model and be able to share this with other groups and other associations who can do the same thing. So with that, let's get into the conversation. Paul, Heidi, thanks again. Again, Clark, thanks for turning your camera on. Others are welcome to do so. Nice to see you. So we're going to really just have a casual conversation, but there's a lot of content here. If you do have a question, drop it into the chat. If it's timely, I'll try to drop it in. Otherwise, again, we have time at the end. We'll keep track, and Francis will acknowledge that we did see your question. So I'm going to get started. I think, Heidi, I'll start with you. Just Heidi and I have known each other for a long time and some of the origins of her organization. So I'm gonna start there, and then I'm gonna go over to Paul. But really, what I want to set the stage for is, why this? Why did you, put sustainability at the core of your organization? How did you start? And then we'll get into some of the challenges. So maybe just like overview organization, Heidi, and where does this play in how you operate and do business? I'm going to unmute you, Heidi. Hold on. There you go.
Chowgirls started in 2004, and when we entered the market, one of the ways that we differentiated ourselves from other caterers was to feature organic ingredients, and that was there was the co-ops out there, a couple of organic restaurants, but nobody was really focusing on that with catering. And then after a year of doing that, we learned a little bit more about the value of using local ingredients. And that led us to also using seasonal ingredients, because if you use seasonal ingredients, you're more likely using local ingredients. And the value in using local ingredients is that we're not sourcing and traveling, using all the resources to bring ingredients in from overseas, and really trying to support our local economy as well. And the next phase on our pathway to sustainability, just one door opened another. And so the next phase was composting our waste. I was bringing home boxes full of carrot tops, and we were trying to compost them in the backyard, and my husband was like, this is not working. And after we built a new kitchen in 2008 in Northeast Minneapolis, Eureka Recycling was piloting a composting program for restaurants. And so we participated in that pilot program. After getting composting into our system, we learned more about recycling and all the different ways that we can affect the community, the environment by instituting some better recycling responsibilities. So I took a class, as did some of our other employees, through Hennepin County. It's now called the Community Recycler Program. It's a 6-week class. It's available on Zoom, and you can they tell you you learn everything about recycling, and they also update as recycling standards change. Composting is also considered part of that. Our next step was to, when the Super Bowl came to town, we were contacted by Hennepin County and Second Harvest Heartland to participate in rescuing food from going to waste by offering it to homeless shelters. And this required changes in regulations because previously it was only packaged foods that were allowed to be donated. And so this new program was started because they knew with the Super Bowl coming to town, there was going to be lots of food waste. And so during that right immediately following the Super Bowl, I believe we saved close to 2,000 pounds of food from going to waste, and it was donated. And then that set us in pace with Second Harvest to continue doing this food rescue. From there, it moved on to then we had the pandemic, and our culinary director, who was at that time working with Second Harvest because we had this established relationship. She was working with Second Harvest to advise them on a hunger relief kitchen, and Governor Walz announced on Friday, March 13th, that he was going to be shutting down the state. And she said, I'm going to reach out to Second Harvest and see if there's something we can do. We have this beautiful big kitchen. Maybe there's something we can partner on with them. Within 2 days, we had a meeting set up with Second Harvest, coordinating, getting ingredients from restaurants that were closing down. So we were saving food from going to waste. And then we were going to use that food to make hunger relief meals for neighbors in need. And then we also were giving jobs to chefs who were laid off. And that started on this pathway of hunger relief. And during the pandemic, that was what kept our business alive, kept our doors open. We didn't make any money on it. It was a break-even proposition, but it kept our doors open for a full year. That was pretty much all the business we did, was making food for Second Harvest Heartland to distribute. And since then, we have added a sustainability chef. So someone whose role is to focus on making sure that we're keeping with our sustainability standards, using our leftovers in the proper way. And then our next thing that we're doing now is we're bringing a program called Ridwell into the workplace. They are a private company that has been moving all over the country, and they help recycle odds and ends, things that aren't easy to recycle, such as plastic film, forks, food tags, or bread tags, all kinds of things that are kind of electronics, things that are typically harder, more difficult to recycle, and they pick it up on your doorstep every 2 weeks. So I signed up with them, tried them out personally at home, and then started introducing them in the workplace. So all of this is to say that it's our commitment to sustainability has grown as we have grown in our 20 years of business. It's been developed through partnerships and taking a chance on piloting programs. And also through kind of pushing for change in certain, in the events and food industries. When we first started, it was really hard to find any kind of packaging that was compostable. And so I believe that by us modeling and following and working with these other partners to show that compost is possible in business, and recycling is possible in business, that it created a greater demand for having these kinds of wares that we can, compostable cups and forks and platters. So partnership and opportunity and just really prioritizing the planet in all of our business decisions. The end.
That was great, Heidi, and thank you. I wasn't thinking in front of my mind the partnership with Second Harvest that we had highlighted at an annual meeting in the midst of the pandemic as one of those, essential pivots that so many people have had to do and had to do. So really appreciate it. And as we think about the idea of journey, I think you really mapped out exactly that, right? One door to the next. So Paul, why don't you tell us now a little bit about QBP's history, what some of that evolution has been. I don't know if you have 20 years of history, but some of the things that have one thing led to another and some of the practices that you have instituted as part of your effort.
Sure. Well, I've been with QBP 29 years, so I have seen quite a bit of a evolution. I think similar to Heidi, I was worked in our operations. We run a distribution center, and really our first incentive was like recycling. We didn't want to generate so much waste. We had a lot of inbound packages and shrink wrap and pallets and just trying to capture as much of that as possible. Some of those products, it was hard to find recyclers to take them, like plastic strapping and pallets, but essentially we were able to really reduce our waste significantly. And then when organics became available, we started, collecting organics within the facility and sending those out. So at this point, we have very little waste generated at our facility. And then I think the next big phase for us was we had one location here in Bloomington and we needed to expand. So we bought the building next to us. And then we were this was 2005. So we were one of the first LEED Gold certified buildings in the state. So that really was a learning experience of how much waste construction generates. So through that process, you have to get certain points in different areas. So we were really kind of trying to figure out what's the most cost-effective way to get that gold rating, but also, really look across all the areas. So the building that we knocked down, almost all of that material stayed on site and was either recycled or reused. All the concrete and was crushed and used as fill in the building, in the parking lots. We actually pulled joists out of the building and used them in the new facility. Captured all the rainwater on site and stormwater retention, planted native grasses and plants, so we had no irrigation. And then we put a solar array on the roof. So for us, that was really kind of I would say it was a leaping point for our journey on like, hey, we can do more, and it takes little investment, but the payoff's there. So in that project, probably, we were trying to get, like, we looked at a green roof and the payback was like not really there. So we didn't go that route. So we really tried to pick and choose the opportunities that had a decent payback. The longest payback was the solar array at the time. I think that was like 10 years or something, but everything else was we were trying to target 5 years or quicker for a return on investment. Yeah, so I guess from there, then it became, our climate crisis really became the new priority. So kind of trying to measure our emissions, set goals. We have a climate neutral goal for our US operations by 2030. And then for our scope 3 emissions, which are purchased goods and services, we have our own brands. So we design and engineer all of our own products, but we have them produced by other suppliers. So I would say that's the biggest challenge we're facing now, is to accurately measure those. And then we really need our suppliers to we share our vision and goals, and we need them to kind of come on board. So.
That's great. That's really intriguing. I'm very interested in, these two different paths and these kind of choice moments that you've had along the way. I guess, my next question, and I want to get to, the conversation about ROI and some decision making, but as you've kind of gone into this journey, you each mentioned goals and collective goals. How, were these things that were established at leadership? Who was the champion of the goals in your organizations? What were those light points that said, this is what we're going to do now because I'm assuming this is a core value for us? What was that kind of process like, assuming as like a journey, but points where y'all made a decision that this is part of our identity, mission, value system? Either one of you want to go. That's fine.
Paul, you want to take it first?
Sure. We're in the outdoor industry, and our owners are there. I would say they were hippies, so they already had that ingrained in them. So it was great to have that support from the top. And we were able to early on create a green team. So there was people that were passionate about the environment. And so we were given time to meet and kind of think about opportunities. And then we would put plans together, usually kind of try to on an annual basis, and then we could write business cases for it. And it's that's how we started. Recently in 2021, we applied to be a B Corp. So that kind of was another place where we could really look at across the whole organization, and it's social and environmental. So it's kind of dual purpose. And I think that was another opportunity to engage the whole company, because we had to look at everything we were doing and find where we were not doing enough and try to do better. And with B Corp, you have to get so many points in every area to just hit the bare minimum. And then every 3 years you need to reapply. So when you reapply, you have to do better. You can't just go back and say, hey, we're doing this. It's the same great stuff. It's like, you have to get more points. You have to improve over time. So I think that is also a great place where it focuses people to think about how can we do better. And we're reforming. That original team we kind of, I don't know what happened, but maybe we all got too busy or something, but we are reforming teams around our 4 pillars around ESG, which is sustainability, community advocacy, and DEI. So we're kind of trying to do the same thing as for each area. We're trying to get people that are interested across the company to get together and kind of work on those goals together. And I think the benefit there is you get different ideas from different people, and then they can go back to their departments and share what we want to do. And so I think you really get better engagement across the company. And I think it tells employees that this is important, and we're willing for everyone to participate that wants to.
Well, that's great. Several of my questions were all embedded in there. So we're going to come back to some of those points, I think. So Heidi, tell the group, kind of about how you came to having sustainability kind of central to Chowgirls operation and mission.
Yeah, so like I said, when we started, we wanted to, it was personal value of mine. Amy also had experience working in food co-ops before we started the company. So it was a way to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. And then the deeper we got into that, the more we learned. And also, the more we do, the more we attract like-minded staff and like-minded customers. So it just is kind of a circle of belief that feeds itself. And the more staff we have, the greater our commitment becomes. People, like, exactly like Paul said, people bring in new ideas. We have new champions of sustainability within our workplace. And it's a pretty organic process. There was a time where we kind of rested on our laurels for a little bit. Just, we were the organic caterer in town, and then some other people started doing it, and that gave us motivation to up our game and really kind of recommit to what we do. And that was pretty early on. I think that was in 2010 or something like that. So, you know, the competition kind of kept us on our toes, but also having staff come in who really believe it. And it's been very cool how people who come in who don't necessarily know how to recycle to the maximum possibility, they'll come in to work for us and learn about it, and then they take that home with them, and they start, and it just has this ripple effect. And that's been really important. And then partnerships, again, people will come to us with ideas because they've seen our track record, and they bring those ideas to us, organizations and individuals. Ashlyn, who's on this Zoom, she reached out to me for some work that she was starting up with her organization, the Loom Collective, on how to bring more sustainability into the events industry. And we have now partnered with her on multiple projects, and she works directly with our marketing manager, who also has a great interest in sustainability. She grew up on her parents' organic farm. So we're attracting people who have similar values, and we all uplift those values together.
That's great, Heidi. So Paul mentioned ROI and return on investment. I mean, I think you both have really highlighted the value of teams and collective learning and having that energy to support the mission. Paul referenced, building in choices. Do you have some similar things in, noting that these industries, your two industries, are very different, but some of those ROI choices? I would imagine even in the early days, it was probably more expensive to have composting containers and such, like, to make those choices.
Well, composting specifically is interesting because it's the taxing is different on it than for other waste removal services. Composting and recycling, I believe, don't get a tipping fee or tax. So that was something that, in essence, you're saving money, but it does require a lot more energy and education. We've had to invest a lot in training our staff. And again, you're educating your clients on why you do what you do, what makes it valuable. And a lot of the ROI is intangible. I can't specifically say that we're getting this many more clients because of our commitment to sustainability. Sometimes clients will share that specifically, that interests them. But the biggest ROI that I can point to is that pivot with Second Harvest during the pandemic. Without that partnership, it's very likely that we would have had to close like some of our peers did. And that came from us taking a chance with them during the Super Bowl and trying out this project, and then continuing to work with them beyond that. And then when we needed them most, we were there for each other and for the community. So that's kind of what, because I have had employees question us on why do we do this? Why are we spending all of this time? Why it's so much easier and so much more efficient if we can just throw everything into the trash, or don't worry about compost, all of that stuff. And it's more expensive to buy the supplies. But in the long run, it is worthwhile for everybody.
Just the better.
Yeah. When we
Great.
all do better, we all do better.
Right? We know that one. I'm looking at time. Okay, we're doing great. So, really we're focused on that idea of talent, and you both have touched on that. Um, one of the other things that I've kind of been wondering about, Heidi, you mentioned, early on the pilot program with Eureka, Paul looking at different opportunities to make change with the building that you referenced. We have a lot of different organizations on this call, and thank you for those of you who are introducing yourselves. Let's get to that point of advice. And then, maybe we'll start to, welcome some questions, because you're, two different sizes, two different industries. But what would you say, would be something from your space specifically, but then broadly, that what you would share for advice, things to think about, things to, I would say, not be afraid of? And maybe start with you, Paul, because there's work in this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One thing is, like, my role is new. It was created 2 years ago. So I'm kind of just figuring out as I go. And I would say the biggest thing that helped me was networking outside of QVP with industry partners, brands that we work with. I'm also involved with 3 industry groups. So the outdoor industry, the bicycle industry, and a European working group. So I've learned so much through working with those individuals in similar roles and with those organizations that I don't think I could be where I am today. So I think, like, really networking with people in similar roles in your industry is super valuable.
I agree completely. This is kind of a area where you take the idea of, you let go of the idea of competition and think more about cooperation. And that's been a big part of what Ashland has done with Loom Collective, is bringing together all these different businesses that work in the events industry, and educating people, and ongoing education for ourselves as leaders. We can't, like I said, that there was a point where we were kind of resting on our laurels, and we learned that you need to keep learning. Just with life, I think is that's great life advice in general. So, and then looking at the experts and questioning things. Just because something has always been done a particular way doesn't mean it can't be done a different way. It takes a progressive mindset, and in a collective mindset, I think, to really make change happen.
That's great. And I think that's also a great segue to doing some learning amongst this group and doing some questions. Because again, as Tiffany mentioned in the beginning, everybody's at a different stage in their journey. There's different, opportunities, obstacles, resources to be found. So appreciating both, mentioning pilot projects and networking and finding new ways. I know that that's what we've done. And, I think I referenced the chamber is unique in lots of ways, but when we got started, we really thought that travel was going to be our highest impact, but it is meetings and events that we host. So trying to change, a group of 12 people's perspective on how to make choices about vendors, and, making choices to make sure that, your venue is not pouring 87 cups of water, but they're doing crafts, buying plates versus having, other things. So anyway, the things that you have to start to think about. So we absolutely welcome folks. I need to look to see if do we have anything in the chat so far. We welcome people to pop on screen if they need to, or even just share where you are at the moment, or, experience that you've had that might be beneficial to the group.
I'm going to, one of the resources that we have found really, really helpful is Hennepin County.
Yeah.
They provide grants, they provide business advice, and they also provide that community recyclers program. I'm gonna pop a couple of links into the chat here of those to their particular areas, if that's okay.
Fantastic.
All right, cool.
I like it. All right. People are turning their cameras on. This must mean something. Go ahead. Whoever wants to get started.
I'll
Go
chime
for it.
in.
Great.
Another great resource in Minneapolis is the Minneapolis Green Cost Share Program. If you're going for like equipment upgrades and things like that, efficiency. I work with a solar company, EV charging and LED lighting work. So I know those programs really well. The chamber also has, I don't know if they still have it, but they used to have funding. I believe they still do for lighting upgrades or efficiency. And it's kind of a, whatever Excel will do for a rebate, it's 50% of that. So it's an extra amount of money, and that's per building. So if you have multiple sites, that can be in multiple areas. But there's a lot of money to be found, in particular for solar, if you're in certain areas, for efficiency, for charging. We've gotten grants between state funds and other funds for chargers that paid for 90% of the project. So if you're serious about that, do look around. There is funding available.
That was a great pitch. So I'm going to just put this out into the universe. So after this, for our first today, that is one of the things that you'll see in subsequent webinars is we're going to take a look at a very specific topic. So for example, HVAC, solar, et cetera, but then also bring the folks into the conversation who have those tools for rebates and funding and that sort of thing. So the reference to Center for Energy Environment, they're the folks that help do the lighting audits with Excel Energy. I was fortunate enough to be a part of a pilot program called ETAP that the city of Minneapolis had for a short time, where I went with a representative from CEE and we walked into every business I knew on Johnson Street and Central and went through and said, let us come in. We looked at your lights, but at the same time, we were able to notice like, oh, you have refrigeration, you can do an upgrade and get, a rebate on your compression upgrade. There's a facade grant program that can help with the efficiency for your windows and doors. You just replace the faucet on your industrial dishwasher, you can get something for that. So it is this holistic thing that can happen. But part of our kind of motivation of this is to get people connected to the resources that help move projects forward, right? So thank you.
I'd add one last thing too, is talking about payback time. So I'd say most of it's probably done, but LED lighting's pretty quick with all these rebates. It's between 1 and 3 year payback. Solar these days, probably between 5 and 8 years. And now as a for-profit, you can sell your tax credit easily. It's a new IRA deal. So if you don't have a tax liability, that can be sold and you can get the money quicker. So a couple more comments.
Excellent. Here comes the tips. Diana, you're kind of chiming in the chat, otherwise go ahead.
I totally am. I love this. I would just reiterate what I've already heard from the others. You have to kind of get out within all the different sectors and you start uncovering things you didn't realize. And for us, this is great. As Bridging as a nonprofit who has been a reuse center for 38 years, it's like people are finally understanding and getting it and going the extra mile because their waste, but the budget line and every year that they can't keep paying more money for trash and they're ready to figure something out. So we are very excited about being part of this group in the conversation. I'm also going to drop in, we are members and have been founders of Reuse Minnesota. It's another great place for you to take a look, and I would love to engage this conversation with others. And we like connecting because like for us, what we're doing is what I just heard from Heidi and Paul is even at Bridging, it's trying to find the avenues that are not jumping out to everyone immediately. So my example would be Repowered, formerly Tech Dump. They're a recycling vendor, right? It's tech, it's microwaves, it's vacuums and computers and TVs. Well, when I go meet with Sam and we talk about it, the conversation that unfolds is, wait a minute, you're right. We're recycling your reuse. There are things that are coming in that shouldn't come to me, but should get to you. So he's taking the time and effort from their team to identify the still usables, and we're getting those from them. We also, like Heidi, we partner with Bridwell. We have since they came to town. We've got amazing relationships with them, and we've continued to get creative. You recycle your light bulbs with them. their team members said, wait a minute, I think some of these light bulbs might not all be bad. We took the boxes in a full pallet of 30, and 25 to 30% of what was in the boxes were still good and usable. Life left in them. And I'm like, we may as well use them. So that was their team again, pushing deeper to find more solutions. And so we're finding that kind of getting creative in this moment is paying off.
That's
Something
fantastic.
that,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just, this kind of makes me reflect too, you know, when I talked about our organizational challenges to start and just not knowing where to start in all of this. I feel like part of the thing that can hold some orgs back is just feeling like you have to come up with a grand plan and, you know, a whole like a set of goals and metrics. And that's great if you're in a position to do that. But there's so many quick ways to get started in this, and the, you know, opportunity to just start making, you know, small differences where you can. Those are the things that can generate that excitement amongst your employees and others. So I, you know, just really applaud all of this, because I feel like these are just quick things that everybody can do.
I'm
I
gonna give
think
it
that's a really great point, Tiffany. You know, you don't have to do it all at once. Just take baby steps, and then when you get comfortable with one thing, you can expand onto the next.
I was gonna chime in on that totally, Heidi, because it's like what you said to, you have to start somewhere. And if you try to think of it as one big bucket of, oh, I gotta conquer it. Once we got our lighting and our recycling assessment, then we had someone bought all of our, even though we deal in dishes and silverware, we converted to 100% no paper products, none of that in our lunchrooms. And it's an endeavor to do it. And then we committed to buying the dishwasher and taking care of it. But those are things that make a catastrophic shift in everyone, because we've got volunteers coming through our locations too, and others. So to train everyone to say, we're not in the business of disposable cups, plates, forks. And we had resource to buy those things. So that is what those programs also do outside of like light bulbs.
That's excellent.
Yeah, great points. Clark.
Yeah, I just had an interesting experience in Plymouth a few weeks ago. We had a big event at our community center. It was catered, and we built this new community center, and it has it's equipped for organics recycling and, you know, bins for that and all that. And I saw the caterer come through with a big garbage bag and just dump everything off the plates, right, you know, right into the garbage. And all the drinks were in bottles and everything. And I was like, well, why did we build our facility this way? So it's an example to share, but I guess my question for Heidi or others is, yeah, how do we help other caterers, or do we just hire Chowgirls, I guess is the really
Well, I would love that, but the education piece is really, really important. And one of the things that I would suggest for when you have different caterers coming in through there is including in your contract with them that this is a requirement, and providing educational materials for them for it. And then I'm assuming you have someone on site when it's going on, and kind of having a debriefing at the beginning to say, this is where things go. When doing an event with multiple vendors, one of the things that we've done is required that they use particular compostable cups and wares, and maybe even being the resource for them to get that, so that everybody at different booths are all using the same thing. Or as Diana was saying, trying to switch to reusable when possible. But in your instance, setting the standard and the expectation, making sure that the expectation is clear and that they have the resources to understand how to execute. And then what happens if they don't follow the plan, if they contaminate the waste, if they just throw everything into the trash, what are the consequences? Maybe they don't get to cater there anymore. Three Rivers Park District is really good about that particular that system, and maybe there's something you could take from them.
Yeah, and their headquarters is right here in Plymouth.
There you
so.
go.
I was gonna say, use another entity to solve the problem. You know, Heidi, one of the things that I remember about being when you were all in solar arts is that you had signage that demonstrated, told people what to put in each container. And I know previously that had been part of the Hennepin County grant system, was to use, like, here's signage to teach people how to do this
Yes.
in your place and space. So I think, again, it is the education into tools. And you know, to what you're talking about, Heidi, is like, those are brave steps to say, if you don't do this, like, that's really mission value types of policies and procedures, right? We were just, my colleague and I were just looking at a hotel contract. There's a group of leaders that are going to Toronto in September, and they have a sustainability class that we are a sustainable facility. We encourage you to have all of your guests use transit, all of these particular options. And I was like, yep, this is big. This is great, bold, putting it out there. And then it reminded us we're going to put into our language, you know, when you're buying your flight from Toronto, please buy your offsets, right? So, you know, those types of things, and then really kind of framed up in our mind, what could we not bring or not have? You know, like, we already use an app, but do we need this other thing that would create waste, or we would have to fly there or have delivered there versus sourced locally. So what do other folks have? I kind of just popped in there for a second. Hi, Zach.
Hello.
Zach is our colleague.
Yes, I also work at the chamber, and I do lots of events, order lots of catering all the time. We often always have food waste because less people show up than what registered, but you have to do your due diligence to make sure you have enough food. Heidi, I heard you mention you had some type of partnership with Second Harvest Heartland. I'm just curious of the logistics of that, and if there's something that, if I preemptively think that I'll have leftover food from an event, like, is that salvageable, or sometimes it's left out for a few hours and I just assume it's no longer worth trying to source it? So I'm just curious of programs that exist.
That's a really good point. So there are certain parameters that need to be followed in order to be able to donate leftover foods. It has to have not been served, so it can't have been sitting out on a buffet. And it has to be held at the proper temperature for within, you know, there's certain time windows.
4 hours or something. Yeah.
So you need to make sure that it's within that. And then so if you've ordered food for 20 people and you have, you know, leftovers for 5, that's not gonna work in this system. But if you've ordered food for 200 people and there's full pans of food that have been sitting in the refrigeration, that you can reach out to Second Harvest Heartland to Meal Connect is the name of the program that they have, that you can sign up to donate the foods through that.
That's great, because I think, you know, Zach, maybe hold on to that tidbit as we think about when we're doing our larger events with bigger vendors where we do have attrition that are in the hundreds. You know, can we ask, you know, that happens on our behalf? So thank you, Heidi. As a past industry food person, like, you can't do anything with that cheese. You know, like, there's things that just can't leave, right?
We encourage our staff if it's appropriate. You know, we first, our clients get leftovers as they're held properly. And we also, you know, it's kind of our staff, it's like eat at your own risk kind of thing, you know, especially if you've seen it that it's been sitting out for a long period of time.
Memories. Paul, thanks for posting about employees who walk by, carpool, and use transit. The Move Minneapolis team that Tiffany leads can help anyone figure that out. But then again, if you think about things that you can do within your teams and for your company, you know, looking at how your folks move around and how you can incentivize less single trips and less cars on the road. You know, that's a whole other set of expertise. And I believe you'll hear from the MOVE team in August on how to do that as part of our webinar series,
Cool.
right?
One thing we did to expand that is after COVID, we had a lot of people that stayed remote. And so we had less people going to the office. So we added another incentive so that if you use your bike or to do an errand instead of drive, you also could get credit, which I thought was a pretty nice perk. So
that is a good incentive for sure. Do we have other questions for the group? I know we don't have everybody. We've got some people in the chat, not everybody on screen, but we want to make sure everybody has time if they need it. Otherwise, we're getting closer to our time. All right, anything else from the group? Diana, good for putting your list in there.
I actually have a question about just speaking to another one of our challenges around staff capacity. So, you know, if you're a small org and, you know, you may be motivated to do some of these things, but still requires a portion of someone's time to apply for these programs and grants and to, you know, to see this through. Any advice for orgs on how to manage that if you don't have your own dedicated sustainability staffer?
Finding the people who are passionate about it, and they'll dive in. We recently put the sustainability chef into play, but that's pretty unusual, I think, to have in some instances, we don't have a particular, aside from that, we don't have anybody dedicated specifically to sustainability. It's part of multiple people's roles. And the people who are most passionate about it are the ones who see the opportunities and bring the opportunities in and will oftentimes follow through on them. That's the freest answer I can give. You know, the cheapest answer I can give you, aside from paying someone to do that work specifically.
I was going to say the same thing. I think you have people that will, I mean, it's human nature to not do the work that you don't like, you put it off. And so people always can find time to do those extra things that they really enjoy. Maybe they'll just miss a deadline every once in a while, right?
And I say with this one, frankly, it came down to someone's already doing this work in some way because they have to order supplies. So whoever looks at the budget and whoever orders the paper products is already putting the time and effort in. So whether it's facilities, business services, finance, I'm telling you, that's where it lands. And then to roll it out, it's a different story. But getting the ball rolling and getting that new product in and feeling this momentum, who pays the bills and looks at the budget? You know, that could be an admin, could be a director who's paying the bill. People get motivated by the cost savings.
Absolutely.
I feel like our CEO put us on this journey. Does that sound right?
It does. And so if you have that commitment from the top, that makes a huge difference. You know, which both Heidi and Paul spoke to in terms of the values of their ownership or leadership. Another thing I think that came to mind with this, you know, that we found is it's important to get buy-in maybe from certain folks more than others a little bit, like especially with maybe your operations teams or your finance or HR. In Christine's case, she's all of those roles in one. So, you know, we were very motivated to have her be a part of this. But yeah, I think that those are all really helpful. And I think, again, if you're starting small and making it a part of the work that you're already doing, you know, that's a huge difference.
That's great. Thank you. If we don't have any more questions, we will go ahead and share next month, number 2, because we feel like we should just keep going, right? Francis, oh, thank you. I was like, I can't remember what we're calling it. Here it is. Okay. So our next webinar, we're going to look at system-wide energy improvements. So when you're looking at some of your perhaps larger systems or how you make a big change, it's going to feature Honeywell Energy Solutions Group. I think we have reps there, a rep from Xcel Energy that's going to talk about some of the products and the funding opportunities they have for those kind of changes. And then we're going to hear from a representative from Chisago County who's worked with Honeywell and taken advantage of some of the programs that are available. We'll also talk about, those things are bigger scale, but we'll also be sharing, how do you start to do that in your own space, regardless of your building size. And we have a date of, Francis, you're going to have to just speak up and tell me, or I forgot already. I feel like it's June 11th.
June 11th.
All right,
1
at 1
p.m.
o'clock. Perfect. So we'll send a link to all of you after this. We want to keep the conversation going, hear your voices, have your ideas, hopefully do some learning and do some inspiration. So please go ahead and reach out to any of us. Let us know if there's other things you want to learn more about. You've shared some great resources to kind of stack our deck as we look for more resources to bring into the conversation. But we thank you all for being here. Heidi, Paul, thanks a bunch. We appreciate your insight and your sharing today. And then again, to the rest of our team. Way to get the first one done.
Thanks for everybody for sharing all of these amazing resources too.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thanks for joining us today. Bye.
Bye.